The Black Lives Matter movement has embraced the Palestinian cause, but now there's a backlash from supporters of Israel. I'm Femi Okay.
And I'm Malika Bilal, and you're in the stream.
Black Lives Matter activists came to global attention 2 years ago this week. That's when protests broke out over the police killing of unarmed teenager Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. Now the movement is stirring controversy for its stance on a global issue.
In their first comprehensive policy platform, a coalition of African-American activist groups calls Israel an apartheid state, waging a genocide against Palestinians. They propose ending U.S. military aid to Israel and instead spending that money on social programs at home.
That's just one item in this long Vision for Black Lives platform, but it's getting the most attention. American Jewish groups are the most vocal critics. They say singling out Israel is unwarranted and betrays a legacy of Jewish support for civil rights.
The platform comes out of a Black Palestinian solidarity effort that's grown since Michael Brown's killing. In 2014, militarized police confronted Ferguson protesters. This happened as Israel pounded the Gaza Strip with U.S.-made weapons. Activists connected their struggles and came together for this video.
When I see them, I see us. Harassed, beaten, tortured, dehumanized.
Stopped and frisked, searched at checkpoints.
Administrative detention, youth incarceration.
When I see them, I see us.
Here to discuss the relationships between the Black Lives Matter movement and Palestinians, we have Tariq Radi. He's a member of the Palestinian Youth Movement. In New York, Chloe Valdery is Partnerships and Outreach Director at Jerusalem U Media Organization. In Detroit, Michigan, Christian Davis Bailey is an organizer with Blacks for Palestine and the social justice group Black Youth Project 100. And in New York, Rabbi Ari Hart is with the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale and a social justice advocate. Good to have you here, guests. I know so many people, Malika, are just wondering. One question. It's a good one to start off with. I know you have it.
I do.
Right.
And so I'll pass this to you, Christian, because I know there are viewers at home wondering the same thing that Nathan is. At the risk of seeming ignorant, he writes on Twitter, I have to admit that I fail to see the connection between African-American rights and the U.S.-Israel relationship. Can you explain why this platform came to be?
Sure. So there's a fundamental relationship between Black people in the U.S. and the Palestinian struggle, and that's connected through legacies of imperialism and colonialism by the United States. So we as Black people are one of the largest, most oppressed groups by the United States, and Palestinians are one of the largest groups oppressed by U.S. imperialism by way of the Israeli state.
So Tariq, is that a hard connection for you to make, or does that make complete sense?
Not at all. It's the similarities are very apparent. Despite our struggles not being identical, the systems that oppress us are the same, and I think that comes out very clear.
Do you want to spell it out? That video shows, it goes on to show almost an exact example of what's happening in, say, for instance, Gaza, what might be happening in Ferguson, but give us some concrete examples where you can say, this is the connection, this is why it's so obvious.
No, of course. So, I mean, right now we have Christian in Detroit, right? And we see the lack of water resources being given in Detroit. That's something that's used to control Palestinians throughout Palestine, whether it be Gaza, the West Bank. We see restrictions on movement, curfews, you know, the same curfews that I felt when I was in Baltimore last year doing street medic work for the Freddie Gray uprisings, is the same curfews that my friends and family in Khalil have to face. So, I mean, it goes on and on. We see the connections between the police, right here in DC, we see police going to Israel to be trained, coming back using tactics almost exactly like we're seeing in Jerusalem. When you see DC police drive around with lights on, no matter what's happening, that's a tactic they picked up from the Israeli security forces. The list goes on and on. One of the most recent, probably, things that's a little more insidious, but difficult to see is the National Night Out. So if you know National Night Out, it's the police's national community engagement initiative that they do with different communities in the city and across the nation. It's very starkly similar and reminiscent of normalization projects, and normalization is the idea where you should think of it as a colonization of the mind, where the oppressed come to believe that the reality of their oppressors is the only reality there is, and that oppression is something that must be coped with. So what I see as someone who's a prison abolitionist and would like to see the police abolished, and something that we also see in the platform later on in the goals.
Okay, let me show this with the rabbi. Rabbi, this is from Michelle Weiser. Marching through downtown Boston singing, "We will build this world with love, Jews for Black Lives." Do you have any issue with this alliance that is forming, has formed?
Well, I think there's been a historic, very powerful, very deep, very beautiful relationship and oftentimes alliance between the Jewish community and the African American community in the States. And that's why this platform is so disheartening and so counterproductive, because you're taking that alliance and you're taking a lot of amazing work that's been done, and it's been complicated at times too, and then you're throwing this wrench into it, and it's a very radical, very extreme. I mean, what our friend was just saying, I'm sorry, Tariq, I believe, was just saying about let's abolish police, let's abolish, the criminal justice system. These are very extreme positions, and it's part of the extreme left, which has a very, very strong focus and obsession, I would say, with Israel. There are things in Israel that are very, very hard and need to be fixed, but Israel is not perpetrating genocide. Israel is not an apartheid state. And there are many, 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 many other countries around the world that are doing far worse. There are Africans in chains, up to 1 million estimated slaves in South Africa. In Iran, they're publicly executing gay people. North Korea is starving its population. Yet these countries don't get mentioned. And Israel consistently gets singled out by the radical left, and now, unfortunately, by Black Lives Matter. And I think that's a tragedy.
Christian?
Yes. So a couple of things come to mind, and that's if people haven't understood that the movement for Black Lives or Black Lives Matter is indeed a radical movement, then they haven't understood the movement at all. From the very beginning, we've been opposed to white supremacy, to capitalism, imperialism, militarism, etc. And so the movement for Black Lives platform, specifically around investment and divestment or prison abolition or Palestine, is very consistent with the values and politics that the member groups of the movement for Black Lives have always held. The second thing that's important to note is that when we're talking about genocide, we're talking about apartheid, we're talking about legally defined terms under international law. So if we're talking about genocide, the definition
so Christian,
says
let's just walk back a second, because the rabbi brought up the word genocide, because explain where that comes up in the platform, in the agenda for Black Lives Matter.
Right. So the agenda for Black Lives Matter states that Israel is complicit in committing a genocide against the Palestinian people.
All right.
If we're committing a genocide, Israel's doing the worst possible job of committing genocide ever. The Palestinian population has grown since the beginning of the occupation. It is a pretty horrible attempt at eliminating another group.
So let's look at the definition
and I'll just say, as a descendant of people who were attempted a real genocide on and who were killed and slaughtered, it's particularly offensive and it's particularly hurtful that language would be used.
So I hear the debate over the language. I want to jump in here because I want to bring this perspective up. This is from well-known activist Linda Sarsour, who writes, if your support for a moral and just cause is conditional on the usage of verbiage and not by the blatant injustice against them and other oppressed peoples happening before your very eyes, and I really don't have words for you. Chloe, I want to bring you in here on this because she seems to say it's not about the words used, it's about the actual actions that oppressed people are facing.
Well, I would say that it is about the words because words have power and words have political power. And if you accuse Israelis, for example, of genocide, that has meaning, particularly because of the history of the oppression of Jews that has taken place, and particularly because in the past, Jews have been accused of these types of libels and other slanders that have actually resulted in people attempting to commit genocide of Jewish people. So it's actually very relevant. It's very relevant that a movement which has as its main objective the advancement of people of color in America, it's important that that movement be based on truth, because else how can you have real justice? You can't simply make up words for your own political agendas. That's not based on truth, and that's not going to lead to an actual just solution for situations that we're dealing with in inner cities that have absolutely nothing to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is a complex conflict, which is a 68-year-old conflict, which cannot be distilled into hashtags and talking points, which unfortunately it has been done by the Black Lives Matter platform.
I think that we're having a myopic view of genocide, and I think by sticking to terms that may have been created by powers that would benefit from not calling things genocide, we don't acknowledge the Native American genocide that happened in this country, right? As someone who, again, I come from the village of Deir Yassin. It was one of the first villages to be massacred during the creation of Israel by Zionist forces. I consider the 44 members of my family that I've lost a part of the slow genocide that's happening in Palestine. It's the destruction of a community. So if you see in Gaza the way that people aren't able to thrive, it's not just about numbers, okay? We also have groups in the US charging Chicago police with genocide, right? So I think you need to be, the platform speaks to the language of the people who are in it and to what's happening.
See, I'm wondering if just using that term, Christian, for the agenda for the Black Lives Matter movement, whether it actually then takes the focus away from critical issues that are happening in the United States, and then people start debating genocide, the word, the concept, start talking about their family in 1948, start talking about the Holocaust. There is so much happening in the US around the issues of black people and their relationship with authorities. So much. The list is endless. Was that a misstep, just even using that word, or was that deliberate?
No, so I wasn't one of the people who wrote or organized the statement, but the organizers of the statement unequivocally stand by the language that they used. And it's important to remind people that African Americans, black people in the US, come out of a tradition that has formally charged the United States with committing genocide against us, even though we're not dying off at large numbers. If you look at the definition of genocide, it says that it's acts committed against an ethnic or national group with the intent to destroy in whole or partially this group, and it includes acts such as killing members of the group, causing serious bodily harm or mental harm to the group,
See, Christian,
and deliberately
you're
inflicting
See, Christian,
conditions of life.
But Christian, you're reading that. Why are you even reading that? If you're
Because the
talking
thing
about
is,
a situation in the US, you don't
talk-
need to read about the Black Lives Matter movement in the US. You are reading that definition right there. Hold tight for a moment. Thank you for the reading. Malika.
I want to just bring in another voice here because we've heard from Jews of color, especially young Jews. This is Rebecca Pierce, and she explains her feelings on this matter. Have a look.
I'm a Black American Jew who is very proudly in solidarity with Palestine. I think that the Movement for Black Lives platform is a really important step towards protecting Black people in this country, and it's something that we should all support on that basis. The Jewish American organizations that are attacking it because it shows solidarity with Palestinians are making it very clear that their priority is protecting Israel from scrutiny and not supporting the Black struggle in the United States. They're also putting Black Jewish people in a very difficult position where we have to choose between feeling comfortable in our community and being able to advocate for our own survival. This is racist and it's unacceptable.
So, Rabbi, what do you make of her comments? She says, I'm in a difficult position between religion and who she is as a race.
Look, Jews of color in America are in difficult positions in many ways, and I think the Jewish community, and this is something I'm trying to work on myself, has a lot of work to do to think about how we lift up the voices of Jews of color and how we celebrate the diversity that is the Jewish people. If you really want to see Jews of color, you go to Israel. You see a diverse, Jews from Africa, Jews from Iraq, Jews from Yemen. This whole idea that the racism, it's a separate conversation, but Israel is an amazing melting pot of people from all over the world, all kinds of races and colors. And anyways, it's sad she feels that way. I disagree. There's nothing wrong with being critical of Israel. There's nothing wrong with speaking. I've spoken critically of Israel. There are many things in Israel that I wish were very, very, very different. There is something wrong with calling Israel genocidal. There is something wrong with calling Israel things it's not. It's not an apartheid state. It's not committing genocide. And those things have real costs. They have real costs, as Chloe said, on people's lives. Today, in the world today, Jews are killed all over the world because of the fact that they're Jews and because people have fomented these ideas about genocide and hatred against Israel. And Jews are targets everywhere, and that's real. And anti-Semitism is real. And I think this platform just brushes that aside, not only brushes it aside, but I think actually ferments it and makes it worse. And I think it's a real tragedy. And I also want to add that effective civil rights legislation, effective civil rights victories have always counted on bringing together coalitions. And sometimes you're in coalitions with people who you disagree with. I know that there are people, when I do social justice work, that have very different views on Israel or on all kinds of things than I do. And that's okay. But when you single out Israel, and when you make it that, extreme argument, that just drives away people who actually want to be part of this work, who want to see a better America, who want to see better outcomes in criminal justice. And it's a tragedy. It's a loss. And
Rabbi, let me just ask Tarek this. I'm just wondering, in terms of people who are very supportive of Palestinians and trying to get them greater support and appreciate their situation, empathize with their situation. How has this alliance with Black Lives Matter, how has it helped?
I think we're thinking of the alliance between Palestinians and Black Lives Matter, or the movement for Black Lives, as something new. This is not something new. This legacy goes back until the 1960s, right, where we see the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee coming out with their first statement ever in their June-July newsletter, explicitly saying their stance on Zionism, right? Bifurcating the difference between being anti-Zionist and being anti-Semitic. That's an important, very nuanced position that was taken back in the 60s, which people
What are the benefits? What have been the benefits so far then of that alliance?
Our liberations are inextricably linked. As our oppressions are not the same, the systems that support them and that build off of each other are the same. And we see that with the carceral system in the US, we see that with the militarization of police, the list goes on and on.
So I see those links that you're mentioning, but then I want to throw a little wrench into this conversation because, Rabbi, you mentioned that Israel is a melting pot. We got a couple comments. I'm going to throw this to you, Christian. This is Austin, who wants to remind us, of course, the stream has covered this story. She says, in April 2015, an Ethiopian was the victim of a racist attack by an Israeli policeman. And of course, we've seen other instances of that. On the other hand, though, we got this tweet from Oxdia. She says, this is actually the first tweet we got when we told people we were doing this show. She says, because Arab countries have been so good to Black people, she rolls her eyes, there's a little emoji there, just ridiculous. So what do you make of criticism that says maybe you should be aligning yourselves with all Black people wherever they are versus other groups?
Okay, so I'll start with the first tweet. And so when we look at solidarity, we have to look at the material conditions that are at play. So in the United States, we as Black people are the most oppressed racial group in the US, and all other people of color sometimes experience that oppression and sometimes they're fine. Similarly, in Israel and Palestine, Palestinians are the most oppressed racial group within the society, and you see other groups like Ethiopian Israelis experiencing racism, but never to the degree that Palestinians are experiencing. So we have to, Black Lives Matter calls for rooting out anti-Black racism in order to build a better society for everybody. Similarly, in Palestine, we have to root out anti-Palestinian racism and sentiments in order for everybody in the land to be treated decently. And if we look at the second issue of anti-Blackness within the Arab world, absolutely that's an issue, and that's something that many of my colleagues in the Arab world are working every day to fight against. But the important thing for us to understand is that anti-Blackness, just as anti-Jewish racism, just as sexism and patriarchy, they exist literally everywhere in the world. It's our job as individuals and as activists to fight to unite with people across the forms of oppression that we experience. But we can't rule out working with people because they perpetuate oppression that everybody else also holds inside of ourselves. So it's a process of working with allies and challenging each other as we struggle against this larger system.
Let me just show you something here. This is some young Black activists who went to Nazareth last year to actually show their support, their solidarity. Have a look at this.
In Palestine, we fight to free our nations. Palestine to Ferguson, in the occupation. Ferguson to Palestine, we fight to save our nation. Palestine to Ferguson, in the occupation. Ferguson to Palestine, we fight to save our nation.
Chloe, there is a point that you could make about this, where activists from one country go into another country to offer their support, their solidarity. But what about the issues within the United States? How big are they? How many are they? What about the focus that should be perhaps in country rather than going overseas? What do you make of that discussion?
Well, I totally agree with you, and I think that this is the point. I have no idea what positive new outcome that particular act of chanting actually provided to Palestinians or Black Americans. It was a wonderful protest. I'm sure it made the people and the participants feel great, but I'm not exactly sure what it tangibly contributed to the advancement of both peoples. But as you stated, we have actually issues that are happening in the country, and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, remarking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, has nothing to do and will do absolutely nothing to advance, for example, the cause of educational reform on the south side of Chicago. The two things have nothing to do with each other. But and to continue, this speaks to, you know, Christian was saying earlier about how the Black Lives Matter platform is radical, and we should have assumed that it's radical because it's supposed to be radical, but this is precisely the point. And this is where I disagree with someone who spoke earlier. To assume, number one, that the Black Lives Matter platform represents the opinions of all Black Americans is to make a false assumption. If you look at their platform when it came to educational reform, they called for the defunding of the privatization of education. But actually, if you look at Black opinion nationwide in America, the majority of Black Americans actually want to have access to private schools. We want access to the voucher system. We want access to charter schools. So not only does the Israeli-Palestinian section in the platform represent a distraction, there are other issues in this platform that don't even reflect what we as a people, again, majority-wise, believe would actually do to redress and rectify the situations we face in our own communities.
And I hear that argument. I think I also saw it online. Several people tweeted in saying that Black Lives Matter should focus internally and not widen the platform. There is this pushback, though. This is Magnificent, who says, a foreign nuclear power does not have a right to acquire my tax money over, say, Detroit or Flint or our country. So there's that pushback. I want to pivot just a little bit because we got several video comments, and so I'd be remiss not to play them, from Jewish individuals who say some Jewish leaders are not speaking for them on this issue. Here's what they told the stream.
Having visited Palestine, Israel over 20 times, I've witnessed institutionalized discrimination and systematic violence, which can certainly be characterized as apartheid and genocide.
I do think the word choices of apartheid and genocide are appropriate, both in Israel and the United States. I find it rather distressing that the institutional Jewish community would rather argue semantics than act in solidarity with both these important struggles.
My American Jewish institutions need to show up and listen to the Palestinians, to the Black organizers, and the Jews of color.
Movement for Black Lives' steadfastness in the face of attack is inspiring, and we proudly stand with the movement's vision for, in its words, a world in which the full humanity and dignity of all people is recognized.
So, Rabbi, can you relate to any of what they were saying?
You know, Judaism has a very powerful universal spirit, and I think a lot of these folks were embodying that spirit and speaking their understanding of it. I relate to a lot of the sentiment. I think there's probably sampling of Jewish folks who tend to be on the far left. You know, in my synagogue, in my community, on social media, I think the overwhelming swath of the Jewish community was very upset by the language and the singling out of Israel on the platform. And again, I think that's why it was strategically not so effective, unless the goal was to really split, to drive a wedge between the Jewish community.
Rabbi, can I show our audience something that you wrote here? It's on my laptop. Black Lives Matter lost me with that Israel bashing platform. Does that mean that you now no longer support the issues of Black Lives Matter within the United States?
I support many of the issues. I support, I support criminal justice reform. I support the end of the death penalty. I support education reform. I support a lot of the issues that I think Black Lives Matter has brought up are very real, and I credit Black Lives Matter with bringing to attention a lot of really critical issues that we need to grapple with as a society. With the release of this platform, I don't know how I can position myself with the groups, and frankly, I'm not sure that the groups would want me to be involved based on, some of their statements in response. I don't know. I want to hear more. Right. I wonder if all the groups felt that way. I wonder if there was a certain group within Black Lives Matter that had a stronger, edgier, agenda that they wanted to push, a stronger
Rabbi
leftist
Ari
agenda.
Hart,
Maybe some of the other groups
Christian
wouldn't.
Davis-Bailey, Chloe Valdery, and Tariq Radi, we are taking you to our online post show. We will continue the conversation at stream.aljazeera.com. Hopefully you can come with us as well. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. Hello again, this is the Streams Post Show. We've been talking about the Black Lives Matter official platform aligning with the Palestinian cause. Malika Bilal, what do you have?
So this is a point that we alluded to a little bit earlier, and Chloe, I heard where you came from on this issue. These are a couple of tweets, so I want to read them. This is from Tyler, who says, they weaken their argument by talking about international policy, and he's referring there to Black Lives Matter and the movement for Black Lives. Another person says, they went a step too far. They need to fight their own battle first. Tariq, I'm wondering what you make of comments like this.
I don't see where they have the authority to tell Black Lives Matter or the movement for Black Lives where what they should support and what they shouldn't. I think if you're going to give a genuine solidarity, like many Palestinians have been committed to Black liberation, we would have been committed to Black liberation had the statement not identified Israel as an apartheid state or not. Honestly, I think.
Could I chime in on that?
Chloe, what did you say? We didn't hear you.
I was just asking if I could chime in on that, if I could offer a bit of a rebuttal, because I think, it's absurd to suggest that Black Lives Matter has this infallibility complex, as if people cannot reasonably critique the movement. This is a movement made up of individuals, human beings, like you and I, and we should give people and allow people the freedom to critique them in the spirit of advancing people and contributing to the flourishment of different societies. But I don't see why we should demand that Black Lives Matter be free from all manner of critique. I don't understand where that's coming from.
The movement for Black Lives go ahead, Christian.
Oh, thanks, Tariq. So I was going to say, I don't think anyone's saying the movement for Black Lives is above critique. I think it's actually a very important part of our movement work to have debates and to have critiques like this. What we are saying is that we've put out a vision for our liberation, for our people, that includes things like the defunding of the police, releasing of all our political prisoners, and land reclamation for Indigenous and Black people in this country. And if you're not aligned with that vision, which Chloe, I understand you are not, then you're not part of the movement. Our movement is for liberation of Indigenous people, of African people, and that's what we're fighting for. So if you think that defunding police and removing the most violent institution towards Black people in this country is a half-baked idea, I don't know whose liberation movement you're part of.
But this is absurd. This is the point. This is akin to saying that you can't if it's akin to saying if you critique us, you are not for our liberation. No, I'm disagreeing with the sum and substance of your ideas. It's as simple as that.
Rabbi, what were you going to say? Go ahead.
Well, I think this is clarifying for me, because I think when the hashtag, when the slogan Black Lives Matter emerged in the initial conversations, it spoke to a lot of people, and it was vague, and that's the power of a slogan. It brings in a lot of people. But I think what I'm hearing you say is there's a very particular, very specific idea of what that means. And if you want to be a part of that based on those groups, like, you have to really buy into a certain ideological stance that I think probably most Americans and many Black Americans, I would think, probably don't subscribe to, and that's okay. It's clarifying.
Christian?
So yeah, these politics, they're not new and they're not particularly radical. Dr. King, at the end of his life, in his Beyond Vietnam speech, spoke against the evil triplets of racism, militarism, and what I'll call capitalism, he called materialism. And he received many of these same critiques. He received many of these same critiques that we're seeing, that you shouldn't be talking about international issues. What does Vietnam have to do with the Black issue? You're losing people supporting your cause because you're taking a stand on international issues. Whereas this is actually where the substance of our work, of our life's work for liberation lies. It's in building connection with people around the world against these larger systems that, quite frankly, if we're talking about the relevance between Chicago and Palestine, the billions of dollars that are spent or given by the US to Israel and Egypt and Jordan to maintain the occupation could very easily be spent on education, on healthcare, on social welfare for us in the United States. And that was the point of the Invest Divest section of the Movement for Black Lives platform.
Which reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of the way a federal system works and the difference between state funding and national funding. But that's really getting into the weeds. I think that the critique of Black Lives Matter is less that you chimed in on international issues, but more that you did so in a way that didn't reflect sensible sober, a moderate position that was based on reality. It was really just a hodgepodge of again, hashtags and slogans that have no bearing and don't capture the complexity of either issues in the inner cities in America or the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And furthermore, you keep saying that you want to raise awareness about these different systems of oppression around the world, but again, the Black Lives Matter platform only pointed out one system of oppression, quote unquote, that had to do with one particular or two particular groups of people in which Israelis happened to be involved. Why didn't Black Lives Matter point out, for example, how Hamas, which is active in Gaza, as you know, is also actively involved in the African slave trade in the Sinai? Black Lives Matter movement said nothing about the African slave trade. And that is stark and clarifying in terms of it illustrates the fact that Black Lives Matter is not actually interested in the betterment of Black and brown bodies. It is in this case interested in pursuing a very specific political narrative, a very specific political agenda, which apparently requires the denigration of Israel and of Israelis, which is unfortunate.
So we're not going to unpack the entire Black Lives Matter platform agenda in this conversation, but I do appreciate all of your various takes on it, and it has taken us quite a long way of understanding from the platform to the different perspectives and the debates that are happening around it. Malika, how should we end the show?
Well, I will wrap up with this tweet from Hoda, but first to say, to your point, Chloe, I think people online, some of them do agree with you, and I think others would say you don't have to be a supporter of Hamas to then also be a supporter of Palestinian rights. But Hoda on Twitter, which is where we will end, she says, our struggles are all intimately interconnected. There is no individual liberation without collective liberation. And she has a little emoji fist right there.
Rabbi, Christian, Chloe, Tarek, thank you so much for being part of today's stream. Really appreciate it. Take care, everybody.